The Galactic Council nexus hung inside the heart of a blue dwarf star, its rings of obsidian alloy rotating in silent precision. Light bent around the structure in impossible angles, casting long, ceremonial shadows across the amphitheater floor. Every species represented there believed this place eternal. Nothing had ever challenged it. High Arbiter Valeth Kor stood at the central dais, his elongated frame wrapped in ceremonial armor etched with conquest sigils. His 4 eyes swept the chamber, pausing deliberately as the final assessment glyph stabilized in the air. "Let the record reflect," he announced, voice amplified by harmonic resonance, "that Earth, designation Sol 3, has been evaluated under Compact Military Statute 7. A pause followed. Ritual demanded it. "Earth is hereby declared defenseless." The chamber responded with layered reactions. Some delegates clicked approval mandibles. Others released low atmospheric sighs of relief. A few laughed openly. The designation carried weight. Defenseless worlds did not bargain. They complied, or they vanished. Valeth Kor allowed himself a fraction of satisfaction before continuing. No strategic fleet presence. No perimeter fortifications. No detectable reality-grade deterrence. Humanity's technological output remains unimpressive. More laughter. A crystalline being to the left chimed mockingly, "They still use reaction drives, Arbiter." "Primitive," another added. Only one station remained silent. The human delegation pod sat recessed, its interior lights dimmed. Ambassador Lian Zhou stood alone, hands folded behind her back. She did not protest. She did not speak. Her face revealed nothing beyond calm attention. Valeth Kor noticed. He always did. "Ambassador Zhou," he said, tilting his head. "You may respond before we proceed to sanctions." Zhou inclined her head slightly. "The record will note," she replied evenly, "that Earth acknowledges the Council's assessment." That drew surprise. Whispers rippled through the chamber. "You do not contest it?" Valeth Kor pressed. "No," Zhou said. "We do not." A murmur turned into confusion. Valeth Kor's eyes narrowed. This was not the expected script. "Then you accept the consequences," he declared. "Immediate revocation of compact protection. Trade corridors suspended. An occupation window of 14 standard cycles authorized." Zhou met his gaze. "Understood." Nothing more. The Council seal burned itself into the air, final and absolute. The decision propagated across the network in less than a second. Earth was alone. Across 12,000 light-years, deep beneath the granite mantle of the Himalayas, Commander Elias Rourke stood in a room without windows. The chamber was circular, utilitarian, stripped of ornamentation. Only the projection at its center glowed. He watched the verdict replay once. Then again. Around him, senior figures of the Earth Defense Authority waited. No one spoke. They did not need to. Rourke exhaled slowly and straightened. "Confirmation?" he asked. A woman in a gray uniform nodded. Council vote carried unanimously. Occupation forces mobilizing. Timeline? 14 days, another officer said. Then hesitated. Officially. Rourke nodded once. And unofficially? They'll probe earlier. Of course they will. Silence returned, heavy but controlled. There was no panic here. No raised voices. These people had trained their entire lives for moments that never appeared in public history. Rourke turned toward the far wall. "Seal status?" A deep mechanical tone answered, followed by a list of green indicators. "All vaults secured. Phase silence protocols intact." He considered that for a moment. Then asked the only question that mattered. "Is phase silence still necessary?" The room felt colder. The gray-uniformed woman met his eyes. "The Council has declared Earth defenseless." Rourke closed his eyes briefly. Not in fear. In acceptance. "Then phase silence has ended," he said. No cheers followed. Just acknowledgements. Orders moved instantly, cascading through channels that did not exist on any galactic map. Facilities that had slept for decades woke without sound. Instruments calibrated themselves against constants humanity had learned not to trust. Far above, on the surface, Earth continued as usual. Cities breathed. Oceans shifted. No alarms sounded. No broadcasts interrupted the day. Humanity did not announce what it was about to do. Back in the Nexus, Valeth Core watched fleet icons assemble with satisfaction. Thousands of warships aligned, banners of the compact unfurling across projected space. Prepare the occupation doctrine, he ordered. Earth will submit before first contact. An aide hesitated. Arbiter, should we consider contingency scenarios? Valeth Core turned slowly. Against what? The aide lowered its gaze. Unknowns. There are none, Valeth Core said. The assessment was clear. He dismissed the thought and looked once more toward the human delegation pod. It was empty now. The ambassador had already departed. For the first time in centuries, the Nexus registered a minor fluctuation. A brief distortion in local gravity, dismissed as stellar interference. No one paid attention. On Earth, Commander Rourke watched a different display. Lines of data scrolled in patterns that would have been meaningless to any alien observer. He placed his hand against the console, feeling the faint vibration beneath his palm. Notify civilian oversight, he said quietly. No public alerts. Maintain normal operations. Yes, sir. He straightened and addressed the room. We will not strike first, he continued. We will not posture. We will not warn. A few heads lifted. Not in doubt, but in understanding. When they arrive, Rourke finished, they will learn why we were quiet. Above the Himalayas, the planet kept turning. The galaxy had made its declaration. Humanity had already answered. The first Council Vanguard exited hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system with flawless precision. Thousands of warships unfolded into formation, their hulls reflecting the distant light of Earth's sun. Sensor arrays swept outward, probing for resistance, for mines, for something, anything, that justified caution. They found nothing. Confirm readings, Fleet Marshal Cathare ordered, his voice sharp with disbelief. No defensive satellites. No interdiction fields. His tactical officer hesitated. Confirmed, Marshal. Sol system remains clear. A ripple of satisfaction moved across the command deck. This was how weak worlds ended, quietly, efficiently, with no spectacle required. Advance to occupation posture, Cathare said. Begin orbital dominance. The fleet surged forward. Then the first anomaly appeared. It was subtle. A destroyer on the far left flank reported a minor navigational drift, barely measurable. Its helm corrected automatically, but the correction overcompensated, sending the vessel into a slow, spiraling deviation. Helm error? Cathare asked. Negative, the officer replied, confusion creeping into his tone. Guidance systems are functioning. The reference constants shifted. Explain. The officer paused, recalculating. Local gravity vectors are inconsistent. Not stronger. Not weaker. Different. Before Cathare could respond, 3 more ships flagged the same issue. Then 12. Then hundreds. The fleet's perfect geometry began to warp, lines bending as if space itself had grown uncertain about where things belonged. Emergency correction protocols, Cathare snapped. They failed. Across the system, human instruments registered the change long before any alien understood it. Deep beneath Earth's surface, Commander Elias Rourke watched the data unfold in silence. The numbers did not alarm him. They reassured him. A junior analyst broke the quiet. They're inside the threshold. Rourke nodded. Then initiate localized constant modulation. Amplitude? Minimal, he said. Let them notice. Back in the Council fleet, panic spread with mathematical speed. Energy readings fluctuated without pattern. Timestamps desynchronized. A cruiser attempted to fire its thrusters and found that momentum behaved differently than expected, the exhaust curling inward instead of back. "This is impossible," an engineer muttered. "Constants don't just move." They did now. Fleet Marshal Cathare opened a channel to the Council Nexus. "Arbiter, we are encountering environmental irregularities. Request clarification." High Arbiter Valeth Kor appeared moments later, his expression already irritated. "Your report lacks coherence, Marshal." "Sir, physics is unstable." The chamber behind Valeth Kor filled with murmurs. He stiffened. "You are suggesting a natural phenomenon?" "No, Arbiter. Natural laws do not behave like this." Valeth Kor turned toward his science aides. "Assessment." One of them hesitated too long. "We cannot classify it." That silence carried weight. In Sol, the human response remained restrained. No missiles launched. No fleets emerged. Earth's orbit stayed empty, serene. Rourke folded his arms. "Phase 2, he said quietly. A technician swallowed. "Phase 2 authorizes." "I know what it authorizes," Rourke replied. "Proceed." Across the invading armada, the anomalies intensified. Weapon systems lost targeting coherence. Beams bent away from intended vectors, dispersing harmlessly into vacuum. A battleship attempted to raise its shields and discovered that energy refused to form a closed surface. "Weapons ineffective," someone shouted. "Shields failing." Cathare felt something unfamiliar tightening his chest. "All units, halt advance. Pull back 2. The order never completed. Entire squadrons froze mid-maneuver, their ships locked between instants, caught in a fraction of time stretched thin. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Simply, paused. Valeth Kor watched the live feed in growing disbelief. What is Earth doing? At that moment, a single transmission pierced the chaos. It carried no encryption, no emblem, no threat display. Just a calm human voice. "This is Commander Elias Rourke of Earth." The Council chamber fell silent. "We are aware of your presence," Rourke continued. "We note your confusion." Valeth Kor leaned forward. "You are interfering with Council operations." Rourke did not raise his voice. "No. We are correcting an assumption." "What assumption?" "That war requires fleets." Data streamed across Council displays, ships immobilized, formations unraveling, entire battle groups losing coherence as space itself refused to cooperate with their designs. "You declared Earth defenseless," Rourke said. "We agreed." Valeth Kor slammed a claw against the dais. "You will cease this action immediately." Rourke paused, just long enough to be deliberate. "We have not taken action." The words unsettled the chamber more than any explosion could have. "Then what is this?" Valeth Kor demanded. "This," Rourke replied, "is environment management." The transmission ended. In the fleet, reality continued to unravel. Not violently. Not spectacularly. It simply stopped obeying expectations. Ships attempting retreat found their paths folding inward. Sensors contradicted themselves. "'Cause no longer guaranteed effect." Cathare stared at his tactical display, breath shallow. "They're not attacking us," he whispered. "They're removing the battlefield." Back on Earth, Rourke watched the confirmation light turn amber. The modulation held stable. "They're learning," an aide said. Rourke shook his head slightly. "They're realizing." Beyond Sol, the galaxy began to notice. Long-range observers recorded impossible readings. Mathematicians argued. Theorists went silent. For the first time in recorded history, a Council invasion stalled without a single shot fired. And humanity had yet to escalate. The Galactic Council nexus had never known fear. Debate, rivalry, even open hostility, yes. But fear required uncertainty, and the Council had ruled by certainty for millennia. Now, uncertainty sat at the center of the chamber. High Arbiter Valeth Kor stared at the collapsing tactical projections in silence. Fleet icons blinked, distorted, then vanished, not exploding, not destroyed, simply removed from relevance. Entire battlegroups no longer obeyed linear positioning. Distance itself seemed offended by their presence. "This is not warfare," Valeth Kor said at last, his voice brittle. "It is sabotage." A senior scientist answered carefully. "Arbiter, sabotage implies a target. There is no target. The parameters themselves are being rewritten." Valeth Kor turned on him. "By whom?" The scientist swallowed. "By Earth." In the Sol system, the final phase unfolded without ceremony. Commander Elias Rourke stood with his hands clasped behind his back as the status board shifted from amber to red. "Not danger, completion. Council fleet integrity has dropped below recoverable thresholds," an officer reported. "No hostile output detected." Rourke nodded. "Maintain stability. Do not pursue." "Sir," another voice said, hesitant, "some of the ships are disappearing." Rourke did not look surprised. "They're not disappearing. They're losing the conditions required to exist where they are." No one asked him to clarify. Back in the invasion force, Fleet Marshal Kethar felt his flagship shudder, not from impact, but from absence. The stars outside the viewport dimmed, not fading but losing relevance, as if the universe had decided this configuration was inefficient. "Engineering," he said quietly, "status." There was no reply. The command deck lights flickered, then stabilized at an unfamiliar hue. Sensors reported contradictory data: mass without gravity, energy without direction. The concept of forward no longer applied. "We are being unmade," a navigator whispered. Kethar closed his eyes. In that moment, clarity arrived, sharp and merciless. "No," he said. "We are being ignored." Across the council chamber, alarms that had never existed finally sounded. Delegates rose from their stations, voices overlapping in disbelief. "This violates every compact statute. They cannot do this." Valeth Kor raised his limbs, struggling to restore order. "Silence. Earth will answer for this." As if summoned, a channel opened. Commander Rourke appeared once more, his image steady, unadorned. No banners. No symbols. Just a human in a dark uniform. "Arbiter Valeth Kor," Rourke said, "you requested clarification." Valeth Kor leaned forward, rage barely contained. "You have crippled a council fleet without declaration. This is an act of war." Rourke's expression did not change. "No," he replied. "An act of war requires opposition. You declare Earth defenseless. You removed us from the category of adversary. That is sophistry." "It is classification," Rourke said calmly. "We did not attack your forces. We adjusted local reality to remove hostile viability." A murmur swept the chamber. The implications sank in slowly, like poison. Valeth Kor's voice dropped. "You wield weapons beyond compact authorization." Rourke shook his head once. "We do not wield weapons." "Then what do you call this?" Valeth Kor demanded. Rourke met his gaze. "Infrastructure." Silence followed. "Not the ceremonial kind. The kind that arrives when belief fractures." "We spent centuries studying war," Rourke continued. "You studied fleets, shields, escalation ladders. We studied extinction events. Supernovae. Gamma bursts. Planetary collapse. We asked a different question." Valeth Kor said nothing. "What ends conflict permanently?" Rourke finished. "On the tactical displays, the last coherent council formation destabilized. Ships lost cohesion, slipping into zones where time no longer progressed forward. Records auto-purged as data ceased to correlate. Not a single explosion marked their passing." "They are gone," a council aide whispered. Valeth Kor's posture sagged. You could have ruled the galaxy, he said quietly. Why stop? Rourke answered without hesitation. Because ruling requires maintenance. We prefer boundaries. And what boundary is that? Valeth Kor asked. Rourke's eyes hardened, just slightly. Do not come here. The transmission ended. In the hours that followed, the galaxy reeled. Long-range observatories confirmed the impossible, a Council invasion fleet erased without battle, without debris, without precedent. Star maps updated themselves to remove inconsistencies. Trade routes recalculated around newly unstable regions. The Council convened an emergency session, but the words felt hollow now. Authority bled away with every unanswered question. On Earth, the world remained unchanged. Children went to school. Markets opened. Rain fell where it always had. Humanity did not celebrate. There were no speeches, no parades. Deep underground, Rourke received the final report. Council forces neutralized. Reality constants restored. No residual instability. He nodded. Good. Seal the systems. Sir, the gray-uniformed woman asked, what if they try again? Rourke considered that. They won't. And if they do? Then we'll remind them. Days later, a single amendment circulated across the galactic network, authored by a fractured council. Earth classification updated. Strategic absolute, non-engageable. No signatures accompanied it. None were required. In the quiet that followed, the galaxy adjusted. Borders shifted. Empires reconsidered their assumptions. Scholars erased old doctrines and started over. And in the spaces between stars, one truth settled heavily over every civilization that learned of soul. Humanity had never been defenseless. It had simply been patient. The galaxy trembled, not from fear of what humanity had done, but from understanding what it had chosen not to do. Silence did not end when the Council fleet vanished. It expanded. Across the galaxy, sensors recalibrated themselves in quiet confusion. Navigation charts flagged regions that no longer behaved as expected. Astrophysicists ran simulations that refused to converge. Entire academies suspended instruction, not from panic, but from the realization that their models were incomplete. The Galactic Council reconvened 3 cycles later. The Nexus still hung inside the blue dwarf, immaculate as ever, yet the chamber felt smaller. Fewer delegates occupied their stations. Some species had withdrawn entirely. Others attended only through proxies, unwilling to risk presence. High Arbiter Valeth Kor entered without ceremony. His armor bore no sigils now. The symbols of conquest had been removed, not by order, but by quiet consensus. The floor recognizes the Arbiter, an automated voice announced, lacking its former authority. Valeth Kor stood and waited. No applause followed. No ritual acknowledgement. He began anyway. The invasion of soul has failed, he said, voice steady but stripped of grandeur. Not tactically. Conceptually. No one contradicted him. A delegate from the Triune Fold spoke first. You misclassified Earth. Valeth Kor inclined his head. Yes. You provoked a species without understanding its doctrine. Yes. Another voice followed, colder. You endangered the compact. That accusation lingered. Valeth Kor looked around the chamber. The compact was built on dominance. On the assumption that power expresses itself visibly. Humanity disproved that assumption. A low murmur rippled outward. They did not conquer, he continued. They corrected us. The word tasted bitter. A scientific envoy projected a sparse report into the air. Post-event analysis confirms no residual aggression. Earth restored altered constants voluntarily. No expansion followed. No demands issued. Which makes them more dangerous, someone said quietly. Valeth Kor shook his head. No. It makes them uninterested. that unsettled the chamber more than any threat. On Earth, Commander Elias Rourke stood at the edge of a balcony overlooking a city that did not know his name. Traffic moved below. Lights flickered on as evening settled. Life continued, stubbornly ordinary. "You should rest," the gray-uniformed woman said behind him. In a moment, Rourke replied. A secure channel chimed. He turned back inside and accepted the transmission. The council's seal appeared, smaller now, subdued. "Commander Rourke," Valeth Kor said, his image steady. "We request dialogue." Rourke studied him for a long second. "You already have it," he said. Valeth Kor did not argue. "The council intends to amend Earth's status." "I know. You engineered this outcome," Valeth Kor said. "Not the conflict, the aftermath." Rourke folded his arms. "We engineered restraint. And if others attempt what we did, they will observe your example," Rourke answered. "That will suffice." Valeth Kor hesitated. "You could have ended the council." "Yes," Rourke agreed. "But collapse creates instability. Instability breeds desperation. We prefer predictability." The Arbiter regarded him with something approaching humility. "Then what do you want?" Rourke's answer came without delay. "Distance." The channel closed. Within days, the amendment circulated across every network node, translated into thousands of languages. Earth, strategic absolute. Engagement prohibited. Observation only. No celebration followed. No announcement on Earth acknowledged it. The document simply existed, immutable and heavy. Galactic power structures adjusted around it. Expansion doctrines were rewritten. Young species were warned, not with fear, but with cautionary history. The Sol system became a reference point in lectures titled Unexpressed Power. On Earth, the vault sealed again. Instruments powered down. Constants returned to their familiar, comforting lies. Rourke convened his final briefing in the underground chamber. Faces looked tired, but steady. "Phase silence reinstated," he said. "Long term." A hand rose. "Sir, after this, will they ever understand us?" Rourke considered the question. "Understanding is optional," he said. "Respect is sufficient." Another officer asked, "And if someone tries to force understanding?" Rourke allowed himself a thin smile. "Then they'll learn why we avoid explanations." The meeting adjourned. One by one, people returned to roles that would never be recorded in open archives. Years passed. The council slowly dissolved, not through revolt, but irrelevance. Regional accords replaced centralized authority. Borders softened. War became expensive in ways no fleet could offset. Humanity did not lead these changes. It did not advise. It did not intervene. It simply remained. In time, myths formed at the edges of civilization. Stories of a quiet world where stars obeyed different rules. Where invasion meant disappearance. Where silence answered arrogance. Most dismissed them as exaggeration. A few listened. On a clear night, Commander Elias Rourke stood beneath an open sky, far from command rooms and sealed doors. He watched the stars without instruments, as his ancestors once had. Humanity had not won a war. It had ended an assumption. And in doing so, it had given the galaxy something unfamiliar, something fragile, something valuable. Space to think. The silence endured, not as a threat, but as a promise. So long as it was respected.